Your process may vary, but I've started off on my iPad and using Adobe Draw, and you can see here image that I downloaded and used to trace. So if I hide that, and then I've traced the foreground layer and the middle ground layer and the background layer, as well as the mountain in the background with the cross. So I take this and then I would send it to Adobe Illustrator, so a desktop app. And then, with any luck, it should open Adobe Illustrator on my computer. And so you can see here's Adobe Illustrator on the computer. I've added a few features. I've added the big O, I've got some more buildings over here. I've resized the artboard. I've simplified a lot of the paths to make it more efficient. And now what I'm going to do is save this as an SVG. Notice that I'm using embed to embed the image location. And then if we open that up in Visual Studio Code, so we can see here we've got the Sketch 2 demo SVG. We've got our SVG with all the code, and there's quite a bit of code, but this gives you a good idea of what's happening in the background in Illustrator when you're adding points and curves and all the different elements for your illustration. So I've got my template here, and I'm going to add a new section. So section, and we'll call it SVG. And inside that section, I'm going to add an image just like you would for a JPEG or a PNG. And then inside the image, I'm going to add the actual SVG. So Sketch 2 Demo SVG, and save that and upload. And then I'll make sure that I've uploaded this. And we'll go to Web 2, and this is SVG. And there we can see I've got my illustration in SVG inside the page. I mean, I find it easier if I can figure out which element is which. So for instance, what I could do is I could change this to a different color, and then upload. And if I come back here and refresh, I can see that this is the mountain. So now what I can do is all the ST0s, I can change those to mountain. And so I'll go through and do this for the rest. Okay, so I've organized my my paths or my classes. So I've got the mountain, the cross, so we've got St. Catherine, Sherbrooke, Rennie Levesque. ST4, you'll see it says display none. It's something I turned off. And then I've got the big O, and then I've got the fill for the big O, which are slightly different colors. So now this is what we're looking at with all the elements in the image and placed on the background. So let's get started with the animation. So the first thing that we want to do is create one of those animations. So we'll start with, I guess, the foreground, right, which is Rennie Levesque, and I'm going to create a new keyframe animation. So if you've already done the keyframes video, then you should know how this works. And I'm going to call it Rennie Levesque Moves. And then we're opening up our curly braces, and I'm going to have 3 points. I'm going to have a 0%. So at the start, and I'm going to set transform translate X to be equal to minus 600 pixels. At 50%, I'm going to have it transform, and let me just do this right away. transform translate X, and we'll put it at 600 pixels, so it's going to move across the screen, and then we'll have it at 100% of the animation transform back to its original starting point. And so now inside René Lévesque, let's add that animation. So we'll use the long form again. So the animation name is René Lévesque moves. The animation duration is, let's put it at 15 seconds. Actually, let's put it at 10 seconds for now. And we'll have to slow this down probably to 15 or even 30 seconds for the final. Animation, and let's set the iteration. And we'll set this to infinite. Depending on what you want to do, you might set it to 2 or 3 times too. So an animation fill, not even sure that we need this, but we'll set it to both so it will animate both ways, or it will fill the animation both ways. So let's upload this and see if that works. Oh, so that's not working, obviously. Oh, I think I know the problem. Let's get rid of the commas. I'm not sure why I put those there. And upload that, and now let's see. There we go. That's looking better. Okay, so we've got it going forward and back. It's a little bit fast, but we will slow it down. So I'm going to copy this, and we'll do the next animation based on this one. So we'll call this, I guess, St. Catherine is the next. The next one, and then we will, instead of 600 pixels, we can make this, I don't know, let's make it 300 and see how that works. And then we will copy this as well. And we'll paste that one into St. Catherine. Right, so we've got St. Catherine moves. If we upload that, now you can see we've got the 2 sets of buildings moving at slightly different speeds, or at least moving slightly less. So it gives the effect of we're traveling across the front. Now to finish that effect, what we're going to do is we're going to add some scale to the entire thing. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to my SVG demo. I'm going to add another CSS. And SVG demo.css. So we can go, we'll add an ID SVG just to make sure that it doesn't affect any other images, and then image and transform scale, and we'll do 2. So we'll upload that, and we'll come back here, and oh, we've already got the ID on it, so it should be applying already. And if we come back here, And so now we can see it has much more the effect as if we're moving past or we're driving by, and we can see the city moving in that, giving that parallel effect in the background. Obviously, the next thing to do would be to animate the third level of buildings, so the light gray buildings that I'm calling Sherbrooke, and then move the mountain and the cross a little bit as well. I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you the result in a couple of minutes. So you'll notice here, we've got obviously all the CSS styles inside the SVG itself. So what if we wanted to put that into a separate file? Well, we could, if I copy all this out, and I'm going to create another new CSS file. And I'll call it SVG demo external. And then I'll paste the styles here. Now you can see we've got our color coding. We've got, it's a little easier to work with. There's a little caveat, and that is that it won't work if we use image. But if we copy this, and let's call this SVG external, and then here, instead of image, we're going to use object. So we need to set this as data, and then we also need to set the type. And the type is going to be an image, and it will be SVG plus XML, because that's how it is encoded. And so if we save this and upload it, so now you can see we've duplicated the SVG, and let's rename it SVG demo external. And then in here, we're going to get rid of this. We're going to get rid of the style, and instead we're going to link to that style sheet. Is by adding, and the way we link to an XML style sheet or an external style sheet from an SVG is using this syntax here. So you can notice that we've got a question mark and then XML style sheet. We set the type to CSS, and then we have the link to the actual CSS page. So in this case, it's SVG underscore demo underscore external. So we'll export that and then refresh here. And now you can see it's not scaled yet. We'll add that, but you can see it is animating similar to the one above. And now we can just go and add the scale. And then, so it's this one plus SVG external image. Oh, and that did not work. Let me just double check. And it's SVG external object, not image. And there we go. I could obviously put some margin in there to create a bit of a separation from the one below, but this is already long enough, and I think you guys get the idea. So if you're interested in doing an SVG animation, and then you can bring that into Visual Studio Code, and then you can add styles, including keyframe animations, directly into the SVG file. Or if you prefer, although it's a little bit more complicated, it can have some benefits. You can set the image as an object and set the type, and then you can link up to an external style sheet. Notice the path, right? Because I have to go from the image folder up to the CSS folder and then into there, and then find the file. And then you can have all your CSS properly color-coded and with automatic terminations in Visual Studio Code. So I hope this helps.